Captain Hyunwoo pressed his face against the cold metal wall of his ship and listened. 3 years of living in the dark had taught him to hear things that should not exist. The faint hum of alien engines, the whisper of energy weapons charging, the soft vibration that meant death was coming. His ship, the Silent Dawn, hung motionless in the shadow of a broken asteroid. The hull was no longer the bright white of Coalition Navy standard. Now it was black as space itself, covered with strange metal plates he had torn from dead alien ships. Red lights blinked where human blue ones used to shine. The bridge smelled like ozone and something else, something that hurt to breathe. Hyunwoo had been dead for 3 years. That was what the report said. That was what Admiral Mira believed when she signed the papers that erased him from the Navy records. Captain Hyunwoo and his crew of 43 lost during a routine patrol. No survivors, no wreckage, nothing. But dead men do not steal alien weapons. Dead men do not learn to speak the harsh language of their enemies. Dead men do not turn their broken ships into something that makes grown warriors wake up screaming. He moved to the command chair and touched the controls. The screens came alive, showing him the space around his hiding place. There, a convoy of Kethvar transport ships moving toward the human colonies. Big, slow, heavy with supplies for the alien war machine. Perfect. 3 years ago, these same aliens had killed his crew. They had torn through his ship with weapons that melted metal like ice. He remembered Sojin, his chief engineer, dying in his arms as the life support failed. He remembered the faces of his bridge crew as the alien boarding party cut them down. He remembered floating in space, watching his ship burn, waiting to die. But he had not died. Not completely. The escape pod had carried him to a dead moon where the Kethvar dumped their broken machines. For 6 months he lived among the wreckage, eating emergency rations and learning to hate. He studied the alien technology piece by piece. He learned their language from intercepted communications. He watched their ships and learned their patterns. When he finally got the Silent Dawn working again, it was no longer a human ship. The quantum drive ran on modified Kethvar power cores. The weapons were alien energy cannons that could punch through shields twice their size. The stealth system used technology that the Coalition had never seen. Hyunwoo had become something new. Something that lived in the dark between stars and hunted the hunters. He touched another control and the Silent Dawn began to move. No engine sound, no heat signature. Like a shadow falling across the void, the ship slipped from its hiding place and began to follow the convoy. The Kethvar ships were huge compared to his frigate. Each transport was 3 times the size of the Silent Dawn, and they had escort fighters buzzing around them like angry insects. But size meant nothing when the enemy could not see you coming. Hyunwoo had learned patience in the dark. He followed the convoy for 2 hours, matching their speed, staying in their sensor shadow. The alien crews talked to each other in their grinding language, reporting normal operations. They had no idea that death was following them home. The attack began when the convoy reached the edge of an asteroid field. Hyunwoo powered up his weapons and dropped the stealth field. For just 1 second, the Silent Dawn appeared on every sensor in the area. Then the killing started. The first transport never knew what hit it. A beam of focused energy, stolen from a Kethvar battleship and powered by human fury, cut through its hull like paper. The ship broke apart in a shower of sparks and frozen air. The escort fighters turned to attack, but Hyunwoo was already moving. The Silent Dawn twisted through space like a living thing, its alien engines making impossible turns. Fighter after fighter exploded as energy beams found their mark. The second transport tried to run. Hyunwoo let it get halfway to safety before he destroyed its engines. The ship tumbled helplessly as he positioned himself for the kill shot. But instead of finishing it, he did something that made the alien crews wake up screaming. He opened a communication channel and spoke in perfect Kethvar. His voice was calm, almost polite. Tell your empire that the Silent Death sends greetings. Tell them that every ship you send to human space will feed the void. Tell them that the dead remember. Then he destroyed the ship and vanished back into the dark. On board the last transport, the captain was already screaming into his communicator, reporting the impossible. A human ship that moved like smoke. Weapons that cut through Kethvar shields. A ghost that spoke their language and knew their fears. But Hyunwoo was not finished. As the surviving transport limped toward safety, he followed. Not to attack, he had made his point. But he wanted them to know he was there. Wanted them to check their sensors every few minutes and see nothing. wanted them to jump at every shadow. Fear was a weapon, too. Back in Coalition space, Admiral Mira sat in her office on Station Alpha and read the reports with growing confusion. For 6 months, Outer Rim colonies had been sending stories about a ghost ship, a phantom that appeared during alien raids and turned the tide of battle. The colonists called it their guardian angel, but Mira knew better than to believe in angels. She had fought the Kethvar for 15 years. She knew they were winning the war one system at a time. Human ships were no match for their technology. Human tactics were too predictable. Yet the reports kept coming. Alien supply lines disrupted. Kethvar raiding parties found drifting in space, their ships gutted from the inside. Intercepted communications spoke of a silent death that stalked their fleets. The breakthrough came when a deep space monitoring station picked up something impossible. A quantum signature that matched a ship from Mira's own records. A ship that had been destroyed 3 years ago. She pulled up the file and stared at the name. Captain Hyunwoo, lost with all hands during a patrol in Sector 7. She remembered signing the death certificates herself, but quantum signatures did not lie. Somewhere in the dark between stars, the Silent Dawn was hunting again. Mira closed the file and made a decision that would change everything. She sent a coded message to her most trusted agents. Find this ship. Learn the truth. But do it quietly, because if Hyunwoo was still alive, if he had somehow turned his broken frigate into a weapon that could challenge the Kethvar Empire, then the war was about to become very interesting indeed. In the depths of space, Hyunwoo felt the walls of his ship and smiled. Let them come looking. Let them try to understand. The dead had all the time in the universe, and the Silent Dawn was very, very hungry. War Prince Kyle stood before the great window of his flagship and watched 500 warships arrange themselves in perfect formation. Each ship was a masterpiece of Kethvar engineering. Each crew had been chosen from the finest warriors in the Empire. Each captain had sworn a blood oath to bring him the head of the human called the Silent Death. It was the largest hunting fleet in Kethvar history. Enough firepower to crack a planet. Enough ships to blockade an entire star system. All of this mobilized to hunt one human and one small ship. Kale's claws scratched against the window as he remembered the shame. 6 months of humiliation. Supply convoys destroyed. Raiding fleets found drifting in space with their crews dead. Prison ships liberated. Their valuable human captives vanished into the void. And always the same calling card. A message in perfect Kethvar spoken by a voice that promised death. My prince. General Voss approached from behind, his armor clanking with each step. The fleet reports ready for departure. Voss was Kale's oldest friend and his finest tactical mind. He had won battles that other generals called impossible, but even he looked troubled by what they were about to attempt. You still believe this is unnecessary? Kale said without turning around. I believe this human has made us look like fools, Voss replied carefully. But 500 ships to hunt one frigate? The other races are already whispering that we fear a single human. Kyle spun around, his golden eyes burning with rage. Let them whisper. When we bring back this ghost's head, they will remember why the Empire rules this galaxy. The truth was simpler and more bitter. Kyle needed this human dead not just for revenge, but for survival. His own position was being questioned. Rival princes whispered that he was weak, that a real warrior would have ended this embarrassment months ago. The Emperor himself had demanded results. Sir, another voice interrupted. Captain Zira stepped onto the bridge, her black armor polished to mirror brightness. She was the Empire's finest hunter-killer, a specialist in tracking ships that did not want to be found. I have studied the human's attack patterns. He is not random. There is a method to his madness. She activated a holographic display showing the star charts of the Outer Rim. Red dots marked the locations of every attack attributed to the Silent Death. See here. He never strikes the same system twice. He avoids our main shipping routes. And every attack happens near this region. She highlighted a dense cluster of asteroids and nebulae marked on the charts as the Graveyard Sector. Sensor dead zone. Admiral Rex growled from his position near the weapons console. Rex was ancient by Kethvar standards, scarred by 100 battles and utterly without fear. Navigation hazards. Plasma storms. No sane captain would hide there. Exactly, Zira said, which makes it perfect for someone who is not sane, or someone who knows something we do not. Kyle studied the display, his tactical mind working through the possibilities. The Graveyard Sector was avoided by all civilized races. Ships that entered rarely came out intact, but if this human had somehow learned to navigate the maze of hazards, "Set course for the graveyard," he commanded. "We will drag him from whatever hole he calls home." 3 days out from Kethvar space, the fleet received its first taste of what they were hunting. It started with a supply depot on the edge of Kethvar territory. The base had been there for 50 years, processing raw materials from nearby mining operations. It was defended by a full squadron of patrol ships and enough orbital weapons to crack a moon. The silent dawn appeared without warning, emerging from a sensor blind spot that should not have existed. It moved through the defensive grid like smoke through a net, weapons firing in precise bursts that eliminated key targets. The ammunition depot exploded in a flower of light that could be seen from 3 systems away. By the time the patrol ships organized a response, the attacking ship was gone. But it left behind a message broadcast on all frequencies, spoken in that now familiar voice. 500 ships to hunt 1 human. You honor me, War Prince. Come to the graveyard. Come learn why your warriors tell stories about the silent death in their sleep. The message was followed by detailed fleet positions, ship classifications, and command codes that should have been impossible for any outsider to obtain. The human was telling them that he knew exactly what they were bringing to the fight. Kale's rage was magnificent to behold. He ordered the fleet to maximum speed, abandoning stealth for raw pursuit. The human wanted a fight, he would get one. But as the fleet plunged deeper into space, strange things began to happen. Ships reported equipment failures that made no sense. Navigation computers showed readings that could not be correct. Long-range sensors detected massive objects that were not there when the ships arrived to investigate. "He is playing with us," Voss observed during a strategy meeting, "drawing us toward his chosen battleground. Then we give him what he wants," Cal snarled. 500 ships against 1. Even a ghost cannot fight those odds. Captain Zira was not so confident. She had been studying every available record of the Silent Death's attacks, looking for patterns and weaknesses. What she found made her sleep badly. The human never fought fair. He used asteroids as weapons, luring ships into collision courses. He exploited sensor shadows and gravitational anomalies. He turned the environment itself into his ally. Most disturbing of all, he seemed to know Kethvar tactics better than most Kethvar commanders. "He is not just surviving out there," she told Admiral Rex during a quiet moment. "He is learning, adapting, becoming something new." Rex laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Learning will not save him when we corner him. Adaptation will not stop 500 energy cannons." But privately, the old admiral was troubled. He had fought humans before. They were clever but predictable, brave but ultimately outmatched by superior Kethvar technology. This one was different. This one had taken their own weapons and made them better. On the edge of the graveyard sector, the fleet finally caught its first real glimpse of their target. The silent dawn appeared on long-range sensors for exactly 37 seconds. Long enough for every ship in the fleet to get a clear look. Long enough to see the impossible modifications that had been made to the human frigate. Long enough to realize that what they were hunting was no longer entirely human. Then the ship vanished again, swallowed by the sensor-dampening effects of the nebula ahead. "He is inviting us in," Voss said quietly. "Then we accept," Kale replied. "All ships advance into the graveyard, form hunting groups, spread the net wide. The human has run out of space to hide." But as the Kethvar fleet entered the maze of asteroids and energy storms, Yunwu sat in his modified command chair and smiled. For 3 years he had prepared for this moment. He knew every rock, every plasma stream, every gravitational well in this region of space. The hunters were about to become the hunted, and the silent dawn was very, very hungry. Behind him, the memorial wall glowed softly in the alien light. 43 faces looked down at him with empty eyes. His crew, his friends, his family. "Soon," he whispered to the photographs, "soon they will understand what it means to lose everything." The hunt was about to begin. The Kethvar fleet entered the graveyard sector like a metal storm. 500 warships arranged in perfect hunting formation. War Prince Kale watched from his flagship as the massive force spread out across the dangerous region, confident that sheer numbers would solve the problem that had plagued his empire for months. Within 6 hours, 12 ships had simply vanished. "Report," Kale demanded, his claws digging into the armrest of his command throne. General Voss checked his tactical display. his expression growing darker by the minute. Hunting Group 7 was pursuing a sensor contact through the Razor field. They stopped responding 20 minutes ago. When Group 9 moved to investigate, they found nothing but debris. Debris from what? Unknown, my prince. The wreckage does not match any known ship design. It appears to be compressed, as if something crushed the ships from all directions at once. Kyle's golden eyes narrowed. 12 ships destroyed without firing a shot, without even sending a distress signal. It was impossible. Yet the evidence was floating in space for all to see. Captain Zira approached the command throne, her movements sharp with tension. My prince, I request permission to analyze the attack pattern. The human is not fighting us directly. He is using the environment. Explain. Zira activated a holographic display showing the graveyard sector in 3 dimensions. Red markers indicated where ships had been lost. The Razor field is an asteroid cluster with unstable gravitational patterns. Ships must navigate single file through narrow channels. If someone knew exactly when and where to trigger a gravitational cascade, she did not need to finish. The implications were clear. The human was not just hiding in the graveyard, he was using it as a weapon. Admiral Rex stood near the weapons station, his scarred face twisted in thought. For 60 years he had fought the Empire's enemies. He had seen cleverness before, had witnessed desperate last stands and brilliant tactical maneuvers. But this was something else entirely. The human is thinking like us, Rex said slowly. He knows our hunting patterns, knows how we organize pursuit formations. He is staying one step ahead because he understands our minds. Impossible, General Voss snapped. Human psychology is completely different from ours. They think in straight lines like primitive animals. But even as he spoke, another hunting group reported contact with their target. Group 15 had cornered the Silent Dawn in a box canyon between 2 massive asteroids. The human ship had nowhere to run. 3 minutes later, Group 15 was gone. This time, there were survivors. A single escape pod, picked up by Group 12, contained 2 HFY warriors whose minds had been shattered by what they had witnessed. The stars moved. One of them babbled as medical officers tried to calm him. The human spoke to the void, and the void answered. Our ships? They fell into nothing, fell up and down at the same time. The silent death is not bound by the laws of physics. Captain Zira studied the survivor's testimony with growing unease. She was beginning to suspect that the modifications to the human ship went far beyond simple weapons upgrades. The technology signatures they were detecting made no sense according to known science. My prince, she said carefully. I believe the human has access to technology that predates our empire. The energy readings from his ship match theoretical patterns for dimensional manipulation. Kale's rage was building to dangerous levels. You are telling me that one human has mastered science that our greatest minds consider impossible? I am telling you that he has had 3 years alone in a region filled with ancient wreckage. Who knows what he found among the ruins? The truth was even stranger than Zira suspected. Deep in the graveyard sector, Hyunwoo sat in his modified command chair and felt the space around him respond to his will. The quantum drive at the heart of his ship was no longer purely HFY technology. It had been enhanced with discoveries made among the wrecked ships that littered this region. Ancient vessels from races that had died before the HFY Empire was born. Technology that treated the barriers between dimensions as polite suggestions rather than absolute laws. Weapons that could reach through space and time to touch their targets. So-Jin would have been fascinated by the modifications. His dead engineer had always been curious about the theoretical limits of quantum mechanics. Now her captain was using her theories to rewrite the rules of space combat. The Silent Dawn moved through the graveyard like a living shadow, its hull phases shifting between dimensions. When HFY sensors looked for it, they found empty space. When their weapons fired, they struck nothing but void. But when Hyunwoo chose to attack, his ship existed fully in reality just long enough to deal death. Hunting Group 23 learned this lesson when they thought they had trapped him in a plasma storm. The Silent Dawn materialized inside their formation, fired once with weapons that ignored shields entirely, then vanished again before return fire could find it. 7 ships destroyed in 4 seconds. No survivors. The HFY fleet was beginning to come apart. Ship captains who had never known fear were jumping at sensor ghosts. Communications channels filled with panicked reports of contacts that could not exist. Some ships opened fire on their own allies, convinced that the silent death had somehow infiltrated their formations. War Prince Kale watched his mighty fleet dissolve into chaos and felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. 500 ships reduced to 450 in less than a day, and they had not even seen their enemy clearly. All ships withdraw to minimum safe distance, he finally ordered. Establish a perimeter around the graveyard. Nothing goes in or out. General Voss nodded approval. A siege. Let the human exhaust his supplies while we call for reinforcements. But Captain Zira was studying her instruments with growing alarm. My prince, I am detecting massive energy buildups throughout the sector. The human is not trying to escape. He is preparing something. Before anyone could respond, every ship in the Kethver fleet received the same transmission. The image of a human face appeared on their screens, lean, scarred, with eyes like burned stars. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of the void itself. War Prince Kale. You came to hunt a ghost, but you found something else instead. You found a man who learned to speak the language of the dark between stars. A man who made friends with death itself. The image smiled, and that smile was more terrifying than any roar of rage. I offer you a choice. Withdraw your fleet now, and I will be content with the lesson you have already learned. Continue this hunt, and I will show you why the dead have nothing left to lose. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in deadly silence. Admiral Rex was the first to speak, his voice rough with something that might have been respect. The human is giving us a chance to retreat with honor. That is unexpected, honor. Kale's rage finally exploded. You speak of honor while this insect mocks the might of the Empire? All ships advance! I want that human torn apart molecule by molecule. But as the Kethvar fleet moved forward, Hyunwoo touched a control that Sojin had designed but never seen completed. Deep in the graveyard sector, ancient machines that had slept for millennia began to wake. The real battle was about to begin, and the Silent Dawn was very, very hungry. On the memorial wall, 43 faces watched their captain prepare to show an empire what it meant to underestimate humanity. The dead remembered everything, especially how to kill. The Kethavar fleet advanced into the graveyard sector like a tide of metal and fury, but within hours, paranoia began to eat them alive from within. Ships fired at shadows that their sensors swore were enemy contacts. Captains reported impossible readings, energy signatures that appeared and vanished, gravitational anomalies that moved like living things, and always the whisper of something watching them from the dark. War Prince Kale stood on his bridge and watched his finest commanders slowly lose their minds. Group 47 reports engine failure. General Voss announced, his voice tight with stress. Group 12 is requesting permission to withdraw due to supernatural manifestations. Supernatural? Kyle's claws scraped against his throne. Are you telling me that my warriors believe in ghosts? Before Voss could answer, Captain Zira rushed to the command station. Her usual calm shattered. My prince, we have lost contact with the entire port flank division. 50 ships gone without a trace. The tactical display showed empty space where 50 Kethvar warships had been moments before. No debris, no distress signals, no evidence that they had ever existed. Admiral Rex studied his instruments with the patience of a man who had seen everything the universe could offer. The energy readings are off the scale, he reported quietly. Whatever the human is doing, he is drawing power from sources that do not appear on any star chart. The truth was beyond their understanding. In the depths of the graveyard sector, Hyunwoo had found something that the ancient races had left behind. A network of quantum resonators buried in dead asteroids, dormant for millions of years. With Sojin's theoretical framework and 3 years of desperate experimentation, he had learned to wake them. The Silent Dawn no longer moved through normal space. It traveled through the spaces between spaces, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. When Hyunwoo chose to attack, reality bent around his ship like water around a stone. His latest target was Group 31, a formation of heavy cruisers that thought themselves safe behind overlapping shield walls. They never saw the attack coming. The Silent Dawn materialized inside their formation, not approaching from outside but simply existing where it had not existed before. The Kethvar weapons fired, but their energy beams passed through empty space. The human ship occupied the same location but existed in a different dimensional phase. Meanwhile, Hyunwoo's return fire struck with weapons that ignored the concept of shields entirely, reaching through protective barriers to touch hull metal directly. 5 ships died in the first volley. The survivors tried to scatter, but space itself seemed to work against them. Gravitational fields shifted without warning, dragging ships into collision courses with asteroids that had not been there seconds before. Navigation systems reported impossible readings as the fundamental constants of physics fluctuated like ocean waves. When the slaughter was over, only one ship remained intact, deliberately spared to carry the message back to the main fleet. "Tell your war prince," Yunwu's voice whispered over the communication channel, "that he is fighting the wrong war. He brought ships to fight a man. But I am no longer just a man. I am the voice of the void itself." The surviving captain transmitted his report with hands that shook like leaves, then set course for home at maximum speed. Behind him, the silent dawn vanished back into the spaces between reality, leaving only the echo of its presence. On the flagship, Captain Zira analyzed the survivors' sensor logs with growing horror. The readings made no sense according to known physics. The human ship was somehow existing in multiple locations simultaneously, drawing power from dimensional sources that should have torn any normal vessel apart. "He has learned to use the ancient technology," she told Kale privately. "The graveyard sector is not just a hiding place, it is a weapon, and he is its master." Kale's response was predictably violent. He ordered all remaining ships to advance in a single massive formation, believing that concentrated firepower could overwhelm any defense. But his commanders were beginning to question his judgment. "My prince," General Voss said carefully, "we have lost over 200 ships without inflicting a single confirmed hit on the enemy. Perhaps it is time to consider a strategic withdrawal." "Withdrawal?" Kale's voice rose to a roar that echoed through the bridge. "You speak of retreat while this human makes us look like fools? I would rather die than return to face the Emperor's judgment with such shame." Admiral Rex watched the prince's rage with the eyes of a veteran who had seen many commanders crack under pressure. "Pride," he muttered to himself, "is the luxury of those who have not yet met their match." But Kale was beyond reason. He ordered the remaining 300 ships to form a sphere formation around the heart of the graveyard sector, intending to compress the space until the human had nowhere to hide. It was a sound tactic against a conventional enemy. Against the Silent Dawn, it was suicide. Yunwu received their formation data through sensors that existed partially outside normal space-time. He could see the Kethvar fleet approaching like a closing fist, their ships arranged in perfect three-dimensional geometry. They thought they were trapping him. Instead, they were arranging themselves for slaughter. He touched the control that Yunyang had theorized but never dared to build. The quantum resonators throughout the graveyard sector responded to his will, their ancient technology singing in harmonies that predated organic life. Space itself began to fold. The first sign of disaster was when ships at opposite ends of the formation suddenly found themselves facing each other at point-blank range. Confused captains fired instinctively, their weapons striking allied vessels that should have been thousands of kilometers away. Then the gravitational distortions began. The massive Kethvar ships found themselves pulled in directions that did not exist, drawn toward coordinates that occupied the same space as their current positions. Hull metal screamed as vessels tried to exist in two locations simultaneously. "All ships, scatter." Kale screamed over the communication channels. "Break formation immediately." But it was too late. The quantum field that Hyunwoo had created turned the Kethvar fleet's own formation against them. Ships that tried to retreat found their escape routes blocked by vessels that existed in folded space. Weapons fire intended for the Silent Dawn struck friendly targets that occupied impossible positions. In the chaos, Hyunwoo struck like lightning. The Silent Dawn materialized long enough to destroy key command ships, then vanished again before return fire could find it. Each attack was surgical, precise, designed to create maximum confusion rather than simple destruction. The Kethvar fleet tore itself apart in panic, captains firing at anything that moved while their navigators tried desperately to plot escape courses through space that no longer followed normal rules. When the quantum field finally collapsed, less than 100 ships remained intact. The rest were drifting wreckage, their crews dead or mad with exposure to forces that organic minds could not comprehend. War Prince Kale stood alone on his bridge, his surviving officers having abandoned their posts or collapsed into catatonic shock. The great fleet that had been the pride of the Empire was broken, scattered, reduced to a handful of traumatized survivors. Captain Zira found him there, staring at the tactical display that showed the true scope of the disaster. "My prince," she said gently, "we must withdraw. The fleet cannot sustain further losses." Kyle turned to face her, his golden eyes now holding the wild light of madness. "No," he whispered. "No retreat. No surrender. I will face this demon ship to ship, honor against honor. Perhaps death will restore what victory cannot." In the depths of the graveyard, Hyunwoo heard the challenge broadcast on all frequencies. War Prince Kyle, calling for single combat between his flagship and the Silent Dawn. A duel to the death with no tricks or ancient weapons. Hyunwoo looked at the faces on his memorial wall and smiled. "Soon," he promised the dead. "Soon they will understand the price of taking everything from a man who has already lost it all." The final confrontation was about to begin, and the Silent Dawn was very, very hungry. War Prince Kyle's flagship hung alone in the void, surrounded by the wreckage of what had once been the mightiest fleet in Kethvar history. Less than 50 ships remained operational, their crews broken by exposure to horrors that military training had never prepared them for. But Kale himself stood proud on his bridge, his golden armor gleaming under the harsh lights as he issued his final challenge. Human called the Silent Death, his voice echoed across all communication frequencies. "I name you coward and shadow fighter. Meet me ship to ship, warrior to warrior, and let us end this madness with honor." The response came immediately, that familiar voice speaking perfect Kethavar with the patience of eternity itself. "Honor, War Prince? You speak of honor after sending 500 ships to hunt one man? Very well, I accept your challenge. But know this, when we meet, you will understand what honor truly costs." The Silent Dawn materialized 1,000 kilometers away, its hull black as the void between stars, crackling with energies that made sensor readings fluctuate wildly. The ship was barely recognizable as human technology anymore. Alien modifications covered every surface, and strange lights pulsed along its length like the heartbeat of some mechanical god. Captain Zira stood at her station, studying the enemy vessel with professional fascination. "My prince, the energy readings are beyond anything in our database. That ship should not be able to exist in normal space." Admiral Rex checked his weapons systems one final time, his scarred face grim with acceptance. "It matters little what the ship can do. What matters is the will of those who command it." General Voss had withdrawn to the rear of the bridge, his tactical mind finally broken by the impossible losses he had witnessed. He muttered calculations under his breath, trying to understand how one human had destroyed an entire fleet. Kyle raised his clawed hand, signaling the beginning of the duel. "All ships withdraw to minimum safe distance. This is between the human and myself." The flagship's massive weapons powered up with a deep thrumming that vibrated through the hull. Particle cannons designed to crack planets. Energy beams capable of melting asteroids. Torpedo tubes loaded with warheads that could sterilize continents. All of this firepower focused on a single modified frigate. The battle began with Kale's first salvo, a concentrated barrage that would have vaporized a city. The weapons fired in perfect sequence, their combined energy output enough to power a small star. The Silent Dawn simply wasn't there anymore. The energy beams passed through empty space where the human ship had existed milliseconds before, but there was no flash of hyperspace entry, no dimensional rift to mark its passage. The ship had simply ceased to exist in that location and begun existing elsewhere. Hyunwoo's return fire came from an impossible angle, directly beneath the flagship, in a position that should have been blocked by the ship's own mass. Energy beams that bypass shields entirely, reaching through dimensional folds to touch hull metal directly. Armor that had withstood the assault of entire fleets began to buckle and burn. "Impossible," Rex breathed, watching his instruments register damage from weapons that his sensors insisted were not there. The Silent Dawn's next position was inside the flagship's defensive grid, too close for the massive weapons to track. Hyunwoo's voice echoed through the ship's communication system, speaking from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Your empire taught me the meaning of loss, War Prince. Let me return the favor." Precision strikes targeted key systems, engines, weapons, life support. Each hit was calculated not to destroy but to cripple, to leave the crew helpless and afraid as their mighty ship was slowly carved apart around them. Kale roared orders at his remaining crew, demanding emergency power, evasive maneuvers, anything that might give them an edge. But how do you fight an enemy that exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously? How do you target a ship that phases in and out of reality like a ghost made manifest? The silent dawn materialized directly in front of the bridge, so close that its alien hull filled the main view screen. For a moment, Kale found himself staring through the darkened windows of the human ship, trying to see the face of his tormentor. What he saw made his blood freeze in his veins. Hyunwoo sat in his command chair, surrounded by the soft glow of technology that predated the Empire itself. But it was not the alien modifications that struck terror into Kale's heart. It was the man's eyes. Empty, vast, filled with the patient darkness of the void between stars. Behind him, barely visible in the strange light, was a wall covered with photographs, human faces, young and old, all staring with the blank gaze of the dead. "You killed my crew," Hyunwoo said, his voice now coming from inside Kale's own mind. "You took everything I had to lose. Do you understand what that makes me?" The silent dawn vanished again, leaving Kale staring at empty space and the reflection of his own terrified face in the bridge window. The final phase of the battle was not really a fight at all. It was an execution performed with surgical precision and infinite patience. The flagship's weapons were disabled one by one. Its engines were carefully destroyed, leaving the massive ship drifting helplessly. Life support was damaged but not destroyed, ensuring that the crew would survive long enough to witness their defeat. Through it all, Hyunwoo's voice provided commentary like a patient teacher explaining a lesson to a slow student. "This is what you did to my ship 3 years ago. Do you remember, War Prince? The way my crew screamed as your warriors cut them down? The way So-Jin died in my arms while the life support failed?" Each memory was punctuated by another precise strike, another system failure, another step toward the inevitable conclusion. Finally, only the bridge remained operational. Kale stood alone among his fallen officers, his armor scorched and his pride broken. The silent dawn materialized one last time, holding position directly in front of the view screen. Hyunwoo's face appeared on the communication display, no longer entirely human. The ancient technology had changed him, marking him with energies that organic minds could barely perceive. "I could destroy you now," he said quietly. "I could erase your ship from existence, make it so you never entered this sector at all. But death is too simple for what you have done." Instead, he did something far worse. The flagship's communication systems activated, broadcasting on all Kethvar frequencies. Every ship in the Empire would receive this message, would witness their prince's humiliation. War Prince Kale brought 500 ships to hunt one human, Hyunwoo announced to the galaxy. "None of them are going home. Let this be a lesson to any who think humanity can be hunted for sport." The transmission ended, leaving Kale alone with his shame and the knowledge that his failure would echo across the Empire for generations. 3 days later, a coalition rescue fleet arrived in the graveyard sector. Lieutenant Jaemin commanded the lead destroyer, following distress signals that had been broadcasting on automated loops. What they found defied explanation. Debris fields that stretched across entire star systems, wreckage from ships that had been crushed, melted, or simply torn apart by forces unknown. And at the center of it all, a single Kethvar flagship drifting powerless in the void. When boarding parties reached the bridge, they found War Prince Kale sitting alone in his command throne, staring at empty space with eyes that had seen too much. He would never speak of what happened in the graveyard sector, would never explain how 500 ships had been destroyed by a single human vessel. Admiral Mira arrived a week later to survey the aftermath. She stood on the bridge of her flagship and studied the sensor readings that made no sense. Debris patterns that suggested impossible physics, energy signatures that her scientists insisted could not exist. "Sir," her aide approached carefully, "long-range sensors have detected the quantum signature again. The one matching the silent dawn." Mira nodded slowly. Somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, Hyunwoo was still out there, still hunting, still protecting human colonies from alien predators. "Log it as a navigation hazard," she ordered, "and send word to all coalition forces. The Outer Rim is under new protection." She never filed an official report about the graveyard sector. Some secrets were too dangerous to share, some weapons too terrible to acknowledge. In the depths of space, the silent dawn moved through dimensions that had no names, its lone occupant forever changed by his communion with the ancient darkness. Hyunwoo looked at the memorial wall where 43 faces watched him with patient eyes. "Justice," he whispered to the dead. Not revenge, justice. The Kethvar Empire never again sent fleets into human space. They had learned that some prey, when cornered, becomes predator, and some predators hunt not for survival but for the simple, terrible satisfaction of watching their enemies understand what they have truly lost. The Silent Dawn sailed on, carrying its cargo of memories and its promise of protection. A ghost ship crewed by the living dead, forever hunting in the dark between stars where even nightmares fear to go. The dead remember everything, especially how to make others join them.